Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Chadwick Clark, host of Wtcog podcast. We're diving deep into one of history's most debated events, the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Some say he is dead and stayed dead. Some say he rose again in victory, and there's a lot of theories in between. We're going to dig deep into the facts, the rumors, and the stories that have shaped this incredible moment in history. Our first guest is Marlon Jarrett. He's an influencer who believes and has shared these many conspiracy stories with his many social media followers. Welcome, Marlon. It's a pleasure to have you on set.
Thanks for having me, Chad. It's a pleasure.
Let's start off by looking at some of the videos that will help us to set the stage for a discussion. The first video is a clip of an interview pulled from our archives with one of the soldiers involved in the crucifixion.
I am afraid for my life. Soldiers standing guard at the tomb were all executed, and the rest of us involved in the crucifixion are now being called in for questioning. Jesus was indeed dead. I'm very much sure of that. I pierced deeply into his side with my own sword. It was a fatal wound. No one could ever survive that. If he is somehow alive, I guess his disciples were right, and he is indeed the Christ.
The next video is of a medical expert explaining what happens to the body during crucifixion. The video contains graphic content, but it's important for us to understand how much Jesus suffered for us. It is overwhelming proof that Jesus died.
I'm Dr. Perian Daly, a critical care physician. My role today is based on the extensive description in the Bible, give you some medical facts and knowledge that it is impossible for Jesus to have survived the crucifixion, making his resurrection true. Let us start. In those days, the crucifixion was meant to be a very painful death. It was meant to be a very slow death provided by the Roman soldiers on the worst and devious male criminals. We have to understand that Jesus was nailed. He was nailed in his hands and he was nailed in his feet. And physics would allow us to understand that if you were nailed in the vertical position, most of your weight would be distributed in your calf and in your muscles. And because of that, there will be extensive fatigue of the calf muscles, and that would have led Jesus to have maintained his weight in his hands, his shoulders, and his wrists. And that would ultimately lead to dislocation of his wrists, his shoulders, and his hands. A rather excruciating experience for him. But then what can we imagine? How can we breathe? How can the body get oxygen in that position? He would have to lift himself from that position of the weight being distributed in his hands and his feet to just take one breath in for his cells to get oxygen. And that can lead to impending respiratory failure. Increasing demand on Jesus's lung and heart would have made it impossible for him to survive this ordeal.
Both videos speak to the powerful evidence that confirms Jesus' death and the rapid growth of Christianity. How do you respond to the overwhelming medical evidence and the eyewitness testimony?
Okay, so that's a good question, Chad. And I'll say yes, the evidence does prove that Jesus is dead. What it does not prove, however, that he is risen and alive today. Can we agree that religion spreads for various reasons?
True.
A charismatic leader, political gain, a social movement. For me, Chad, an empty tomb simply does not prove that he is risen and alive today. I believe that someone might have moved the body, and the disciples saw this as an opportunity to create a narrative. And they ran with it, and it picked up traction. And that's how I believe, today people are saying that, oh, he's risen.
Okay, all right, Marlon, let's dig deeper into this just for a moment and take a look at the following video clip.
Okay.
These Romans destroyed my life. I could not even work to support my family, even to leave my home. And how can I pass these well-armed soldiers? The stone weighed thousands of pounds. Oh, and what would I do with Jesus' body? Make no sense.
It is hard to imagine someone moving a massive stone without anyone noticing. Be real with me, Marlon. That is kind of, far-fetched, especially with the Roman soldiers guarding the tomb. It is almost impossible, but let's look on the next clip, all right?
I was heartbroken and confused. We had put our hope in Jesus, and then he was crucified. I didn't want to get my hopes up again just to get let down. I thought those who have claimed to have seen Jesus were suffering from shock and seeing vision. That is why I wanted proof for myself, to see the piercing in his hands, the wounds in his side. Jesus said to me, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, but yet believe. That changed everything for me. Jesus is alive. We got to tell the whole world.
Can you imagine, Marlon, the weight of what Thomas must have felt, touching the actual scars in Jesus' hand? This wasn't just a vision, it wasn't a dream, He literally touched him. So he rose from the dead. Let's listen to what the medical expert says regarding hallucination.
Okay.
So when we look at the definition of hallucination, it speaks to a sensory experience that does not really exist. But truth and in fact, an hallucination is a personal experience. So then, how can multitudes of people experience mass hallucination? Impossible. The medical literature does not describe a theory as mass hallucination because people cannot share the same fixed false belief of an experience that had happened. Hence, this had to be true. Jesus appearing post his crucifixion, post his resurrection to a multitude of people, each individually sharing in an experience. For example, by Thomas experiencing the nail scars hand of Jesus and other disciples, such a belief cannot be means of an hallucination.
Marlon, I have a next question for you.
Okay.
What would it really take for you to believe in the resurrection of Jesus?
For me, Chad, I would need undeniable, verifiable proof, something like scientific evidence. A mere eyewitness account it's helpful, but it's not sufficient. It's not enough proof. Now, if Jesus were alive, Chad, it would mean that he is a supernatural being.
All right. But I have a book right here, Marlon. It gives you evidence. It gives you eyewitness. It gives you everything that you would need. And it is the Bible. You should take a read of it.
Fair play. I'll do that. Okay.
And on that note, I want to thank you for coming and joining us on the show.
Chad.
It was indeed a pleasure.
Likewise. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Stay tuned for our next episode. We will unpack Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection within a historical context. Join us April 18th to 20th at West Toronto Church of God for our 53rd Easter Convention featuring Bishop Lennox Walker, National Bishop for Canada. The dynamic duo Bishop One and Reverend Jenny Garcia are returning by popular demand. Our theme is Finished, Jesus is Alive.